Okay, so a very good afternoon to everybody, and so we are very thrilled to have you here, right? Allow me to just open up my camera. I think still figuring out on the background.
Screen.
Sure. So I wanted to just thank everyone for your time, right? And we wanted you to know that this session is being recorded, so it will be uploaded for the benefit of other gamification enthusiasts. So I think first and foremost, right, I just want to introduce you to the host that's in this call, right? We have Prapim and Kuma. So at any point,
Hello.
so at any point of times, right, when you have any questions, just feel free to let us know that you need some help. Just you can message either one of us, right? You can see that there's Keith, Kuma, and Prapim right at the top. We are all the co-hosts and the host. And the next thing that I wanted to just share about is that we are expecting quite a huge number of audience today, right? I think as I'm speaking, there's about like one new participant every second or so. So we'll need, that's why we have to mute everybody in this session. Otherwise, it'll be spiraling out of control. And the last thing is I would like to just share is that this is a very informal session, right? We wanted it to be more conversational nonetheless, right? So it will be very conversational between me and Prapim and Kuma, and as well as interacting with you on the chat room. So I will strongly recommend you to utilize the chat room to put out your questions and put out your thoughts, right? I can assure you that we will look at them as much as we can. Prapim, over to you to cover any things that I missed out on.
Okay, so I think Keith has covered most of the kind of housekeeping notes I wanted to cover. So another thing as well is that we will have Q&As throughout. That's when we'll kind of encourage you to unmute. But for now, yeah, we encourage you to keep your cameras off and then also unmute so that, you know, we're able to kind of run through smoothly. So I think that that's pretty much all. We're just going to begin. So I think that for those that just joined, if you haven't already, I'm sharing this screen already. There's a webinar game that we've created using our platform to kind of have some polls and some quizzes to get to know you better while we're conducting this session. So feel free to please sign up for the Gametize account and then just start to access the game using this link here. So no worries if we're going through and you can't see this anymore. We'll be putting the links in the chat for everybody. All right, so if you have questions at any time, just feel free to put it in chat. We'll try to find some time to answer them. So I think that Keith gave a very brief introduction already of who we all are. I'll just introduce myself and then I'll let the other two kind of give a bit of background on what they do so that you kind of understand where our background is coming from. So I've been with Gametize for about 3 years already. And then what I've been doing is helping people, especially like our clients, attendees of such webinars and workshops as well, to kind of build their gamification strategy as well as how to execute their strategy. So you can see my background was in instructional design. And I actually used to teach as well. So that's kind of where, this whole background with, teaching people kind of is in my role in Gametize. Okay, so perhaps Keith?
Thank you, Prapim. So a brief introduction to myself. We started Gametize together with my co-founder, Damon, about 10 years back. So when we first started this company, right, Damon and I were very interested to see how we could use games to drive certain behaviors in real life. And one of the behaviors that we started off driving is collection of data, right, and getting humans and people to actually give out, share their sentiments on issues related to politics, sports. We later dived into dating games, right? That was about in turn of 2008, 2009, right? And today here we are, right, doing games for enterprise, right? We were struggling with monetizing for many, many years, right? So B2B is where we are very comfortable at right now. So my background is really in information science. I'm interested to know how we can group information. But later on, right, I kind of delved into the gaming world. I guess Damon and I both were very interested in using games and trying to see what kind of fun we can implement to any kind of real life activity. So that's me for today, and over the mic to Kuma.
Hi guys. Yeah, so actually just a fun fact for everyone. This marks my 1 year in Gametize. So I joined Gametize exactly 1 year ago from today. So yeah, I'm one of the newest members in Gametize. I'm actually part of the project management and the data team. So as well as the academy team. So I help our clients make data-driven decisions, help them manage projects, and essentially for the academy team, it's basically teaching users like you guys on how to actually use our platform and even make your own games. And I hope that with this session, you guys will be able to learn as much as possible. Over to you, Prapin.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah, so today is 90 minutes, and here's the agenda. So I'll just give a bit of an introduction to gamification, but today what I really want to focus on is more on the case studies. So I understand that, you know, when we used to run this session, we used to have a series of case studies, but, you know, given everything that's happened the past few months, everyone's been working from home. You know, the use case has really changed. People are coming to us and emailing in and, you know, inquiries asking very different things than they used to, you know, like how do I, you know, do my onboarding now that my new hires can't even see me face to face? How do I hold an event, you know? So today kind of want to focus more on the case studies that we've kind of noticed, at least the ones that we've been working with, what's been done well and what we, I think, can improve on. We're still learning as well. So, you know, like these are by no means very definitive. We just want to share kind of what we've picked up on. And then I'll just kind of show you a little bit of our platform demo, just because our clients have been creating our projects on Gametize. So it's kind of like, you know, how did they create those games that I saw? So a lot of these clients actually created this themselves. We would just give maybe consultation on that, but very little or no coding involved at all. And then we'll dedicate maybe the last 10 to 15 minutes to a Q&A as well. Okay, so I guess that, you know, firstly, who are we? Keith gave a bit of an introduction already. So we're a gamification company. So what we do is, you know, if you're playing the workshop game right now, that's essentially our platform in a nutshell. And then we also provide things such as like consulting, creative services. So not only do we provide the platform, we also provide the kind of consultation, in which case, you know, how to get started and how to kind of build your gamification strategy as, you know, your campaign goes by. So I'll kind of try to give you a bit of an introduction to what all this is. I'm not entirely sure like how familiar most of you are with gamification. So how we define gamification is the use of game design and game psychology in non-game settings. So non-game settings means, you know, everything that you want to motivate and engage people for that is not actually like the game itself. So it could be many things, such as, for example, very commonly employee engagement, L&D, things to make learning more enjoyable, to also increase retention rate, to increase participation rate, for example. So those are all examples of the goals that you want to reach using gamification. So what is not gamification? So
Hey, Prapim. So, I mean, just for the purpose of discussion,
yep.
What has been some of the most like common myths about gamification that you have heard from your clients so far? And I'll share later as well.
Okay, so for my clients, the most common ones that they ask for is kind of like increasing participation rate. You know, it might be, for example, a very classic use case that we have that we've dealt with in Gametize is that whatever they're using right now is not working. For example, it's like they're using slides or they're using some onboarding that people are just not getting on board and they just don't find it interesting. So they're kind of like coming to Gametize or asking about gamification in general, like how can I retain users? How can they get them to kind of come back to the app and keep playing? Yeah, that's a common one that I get a lot.
Right. Kuma, yourself?
Yeah, so likewise, I think most of the times where the clients ask is generally for onboarding. They feel that they have to keep using slides to get the new guys to join in, and it doesn't seems to be very effective for them because they just don't seem to remember what they have read off on the slides. It's just really mundane. It's boring. So a lot of questions they ask: how can we make our content fun and enjoyable?
Mm-hmm. So I think as part of some of the examples that we are going to run through later, right? We're going to talk about gameful designs versus gamification versus serious games. And I don't think we are going to talk so much about gaming, but that's one of the biggest like myths that a lot of people and individuals have on gamification, that gamification is all about just adding a Candy Crush or Angry Birds or Flappy Birds to a compliance training, and instantly that becomes gamification. So that is not gamification, right? In fact, there's an internal joke in Gametize that's called gamification, right? You know, like gimmick and games, right? So they tend to be very short bursts, very short kind of games. Uh, they could come in the form of spin the wheel. They could come in the form of, uh, whack the mole kind of game, or even like shooting games, right? But they're very short bursts, right? There's no real uh, intrinsic value other than a quick burst of entertainment. So, and sometimes we have seen like a lot of individuals actually talk about how the moments you introduce points and badges to anything at all, right? We call them PBL, right? Points, badges, and leaderboard. It becomes gamification, and that's not true as well, right? There's a strong emphasis from gamification to actually think about the user experience from a narrative standpoint. So we will share how we can do storytelling using gamification, right, to further engage your participants further. And one of the reasons why like Prapim set up this particular webinar, actually Prapim, why don't you talk about that? What is the key intent, right? How did we come up with this decision?
Okay, so I think that the main reason is because we've been getting a lot of kind of questions on, how can we use gamification now that it's like a remote working arrangement, and everybody's just, facing new issues that they're not facing before. So whether it's like learning, for example, I can't hold workshops in person anymore, and I can't give out the resources, or employees can't come to office. And I used to hold like a lot of Zumba or activities where it really, like the employee engagement was really based on the face-to-face interaction. So, the fact that I'm facing all these issues, what can I do about them? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And on my end, right, I'm seeing quite a lot of interest coming from virtual events. So I think as of right now, right, we all know that there won't be any like large scale events, right? Channel partners or channel managements, or it could be a retail or B2C kind of like engagement, right? It's no longer possible, right? Using the good old traditional method of road shows and real life events, right? A lot of and one of the channel partners management, right? Channel reseller lead actually came to me and said that, we are so sick of webinars. There's only so much webinars we can do, right? And I was like, yeah, that's true. Like, that's probably one reason why Gametize only does like webinars once in a while as well. It's not just exhausting for the participants. It's also very exhausting for the co-hosts and hosts like ourselves. So there's a lot of preparation work that needs to be involved. But at the same time, right, we do see the advantage of webinars, right, to provide a good introduction. But as a long-term strategy, right, we some of these participants or some of these clients came to us and said, is there a scalable method where content can be generated by the participants themselves, by the users themselves, by our own audience themselves? So that's one of the key motivations why we are running this workshop, to give you some ideas how you could use gamification. I think Prapim still wants to maybe focus on the definitions first. So once we get the definition out of the way.
I'll just do this very quickly. So actually the truth is that whatever it is, whether it's gameful design, gamification, serious gaming, or an actual game, actually to the end user, it doesn't really matter which one you're giving to them as long as it works. But for us, we focus on gamification. That's why I kind of wanted to give you an idea of what this is. I think many people have the misconception that like, you know, serious gaming is gamification in a way, because there's that kind of like game element, and it's very difficult to kind of tell the difference. So, you know, we're kind of in the middle. So you can see that for Gameful design, it's kind of like something fun, but there's no real kind of, what do you call it, actual game elements. It's just something that you can interact with that maybe is enjoyable. And then I think Uber as well is a very, or Grab in Asia is a very good example of gamification. So, you know, they have badges and points, but there's no leaderboard. So you can see there's the PBL thing that Keith just mentioned, but then you also get like motivation to kind of do the progression. So you can see the progression here. So motivation meaning like fuel cards with discounts. You also get like special privileges. So for example, in Grab in Asia, you have the platinum member. So the platinum member, you get like a lot of rewards that you wouldn't be able to get if you were just gold or silver. Okay, so there's also serious gaming. So this one is essentially, it's a video game, except that it's not just for gaming. So it's all, any type of VR or AR that you see tends to typically be in the serious gaming category. So I think the question I usually like to ask whether it's serious gaming is that, does it involve like a lot of money? Do you actually need to get like a game development studio or any kind of studio that kind of does like these kind of coding games involved? If so, then that's probably serious gaming. And I think that, you know, for gaming, that's pretty obvious what that is.
And I just want to maybe talk a little bit about serious games. What are the things that you need to look out for, right? First and foremost, you need to have very serious budget, right? Because there's a lot of serious professionals that needs to be involved, right? You require the illustrations, you require, of course, the programming, coding work, you require the music, you require the copywriting, you require the, you know, the production, marketing as well. So there's an end-to-end process. And typically, I think we are talking about like $500,000 onwards to about $1 million, right, for serious games. You can see serious games in military training a lot, right? This particular one is a surgery serious game, right? It allows the doctor in training to do their training via the games here, and you know, through some of the response that happens here, you can see like a 3D implication of what happens to the user, what happens to the patient. So typically we have clients that actually come to us and say, right, can you develop a 3D game end to end? I would like to do a simulation, right? Our recommendation often is, of course, to recommend gamification first, for the reason being, right, the budget is of course a lot lower, right? The cost is a lot lower. If you go to gametize.com, in fact, it's free to try, right? And we have a free plan after that. And for serious games, another problem that comes up is change management. So after you have done everything, it makes it very difficult for you to make any changes, right? Typically, right, it requires a huge turnaround time. So do keep all these things in mind.
Okay, so yeah, bringing into that, there's the 4 key pillars of gamification. So this is something that we'll keep in mind while we're talking about the case studies, and kind of like seeing how much of each pillar there is. So interactive challenges. So for example, one of the case studies that we'll be sharing later, the team was saying that, you know, we want people to do things such as actually complete their profile on their company database, but no one's doing that because it's kind of like there's no incentive, but it's actually mandatory. And then what they did was they gave a survey, and then they realized that people don't want just instructions on how to do it. They want to be able to interact in some way. So what they did instead was like create, once you finish your profile, take a photo of it and upload it here for points. And they realized that they could actually get people to kind of complete it that way by adding that kind of element of interactivity rather than just like a one-way conversation. So in that sense, yeah, there's also the constant instant feedback. So it's kind of like letting them know, the players know how well they're doing throughout the game, whether it's doing well or doing not so well. And if they're not doing so well, then it's kind of like, what do they need to do to get to that point where they'll be good in the game? There's also the competition and social elements. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll need to be kind of chatting with everybody all the time. It's just a sense that, you know, you're playing this game and there's other people inside as well, whether it's in the form of leaderboards, an activity feed, or being able to like and comment on other people's posts. So just having that sense that, you know, there's a community around this game. And of course, there's rewards and redemptions, not just in the form of, you know, material rewards, but also things such as points, badges, a sense of progression, like unlocking the next level, for example. Okay, so yeah.
Could I just elaborate a little bit more on this slide? And maybe I can take on the 5D because I see the case studies coming up, right? Okay, so could you zoom into constant instant feedback?
Okay. I think I need to do that on a PDF though.
Okay, no problem. All right. So I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on what constant instant feedback means, right? So I think a lot of us over here over the course of time must have tried out Pokemon Go, right? And I like to share this example of Pokemon Go as one of my favorite games example that provides you the constant instant feedback. So if you have tried the game, right, you remember that there are 3 Pokemon that follows you wherever you go to, right? Very, very convenient. And right, immediately you could easily just capture one of them, and even without like going to anywhere. So once you capture one of the Pokemons, right, immediately you level up. So leveling is a form of a feedback to you, right? It is a form of motivating you, because what happens when you level up immediately, you will have something called a dopamine. So dopamine is something that keeps you motivated and wanting to have more of something. And that motivation will want you to do more things, which allows you to get even more constant instant feedback. So in the Pokemon Go's case, what happens is after you level up immediately, right? They make it so easy to level up right at first, right? Because they will need to capture your attention right away. And that's also one reason why I am in love with gamification, is because, right, I actually takes uses the theories that you see in the gaming world, right, and put it in real life to see how you can motivate target behaviors. So after you level up, right, obviously you want to have more of them, and that's when that's what we call the feedback loop, right? B.F. Skinner calls it operant conditioning, right? So you could actually go and Google that. And as for the competition and social aspect, right, I just want you to know that not everyone is competitive as well, and we should talk a little bit more about that. And sometimes what we recommend is to have for you to create team competitions, right? That will allow you to take care of both the socializing aspect and the competition spirit at the same time. Probably, are we going to cover about the SAPS?
Yeah, we'll cover that kind of a little bit later on. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think we can move on. So I just want to share about the 5D framework, and what Prapin is going to do later on is she will be sharing a lot of case studies, right? So just be patient over here. So this 5D framework, next slide, is the one that we have came up with like over the course of time, right? In our 10 years of experience, right, creating gamification, actually, really we found that we have to be very problem focused, right? So like every other like business solution, right, if gamification is not just for fun thing, and that's also another myth that we have seen. A lot of times we see that we get so overwhelmed and caught up with creating entertainment, we forget that we actually need to solve certain business problems. So what kind of business problems are we talking about? Next slide, Robin. Okay, so the very first one is like, how can you define your problem, right? So this is something that we always insist on getting our clients to do all the time, right? A lot of times they say, okay, I'm going to create a gamification campaign for marketing because, right, I think it would be nice, right? But if you don't define the target problem, right, you're actually a headless chicken, right? You're just running around without much considerations. So I think in the virtual engagement world, right, or remote engagement world, right, one problem statement is that my colleagues are having a hard time focusing while working from home, right? So that can be a problem statement as well, right? In this case, this is a more like a generic example, right? It's more sales related. Nobody's buying my hammers because nobody trusts them. So let's go on to the next slide. And the second slide is that what is the outcome that you want to achieve out of gamification, right? So you need to be very, very clear about the kind of like objective that you want. Probably I think I might miss out the use cases, where we have applied the 5D frameworks too.
Oh, okay.
Let's go back to
the very first slide.
Right. So these are the different kind of like problem statements and challenges that we have dealt with, right? So you can see that gamification is a very generic solution. It's a very generic process that you can apply to really a lot of things. So in the employee engagement space, right, it can be applied to onboarding, wellness, team building, right? In the L&D space, right, it can be for sales training, leadership training, soft skills, compliance training. In the consumer engagement space, right, something that I'm really super interested about is how we can use gamification for for customer advocacy or even community advocacy, right? It's the idea that you can use gamification to actually create a group of very loyal ambassadors, right? Who are actually kind of like influencers that you see on Instagram, but these are real customers or real fans of your brand, right? And they need not just like purchase products to earn points to get recognized. They can be referring for you. They can be talking about you in social media. And last but not least, right, we have used the 5D framework also in talent acquisition, right, in recruitment and employer branding space as well. All right, I think we can go to the third one, deciding your target behaviors. Okay, so this is a very, very critical one as well, right? So what happens is whenever we run a gamification campaign, we think about, okay, what kind of behaviors can solve the problem? So earlier on, we talked about nobody trusts my hammer, right? Because nobody's reviewing them, right? So obviously the target behaviors over here is you want customers to be reviewing your hammers no matter what, right? Whether it's good or bad, you want to be able to incentivize them. You want to be able to encourage them. The next step, right, is you need to be able to figure out what is the kind of emotions that you want the users to be feeling, right? So typically it's a lot more than what you see over here, right? A typical gamification campaign design will have about like 20 or 30 different like target behaviors, and even like 20 to 30 target emotions that you want the users to be feeling. And then we'll narrow it down to maybe about 5 or 6 key ones. So I love this experience because it makes me feel powerful and listened to. That is an emotion. I feel recognized and I feel a sense of belonging. I want to come back here because I want to come back to this application. I want to keep doing this because I want to. I feel proud when I engage in this campaign, right? Because it allows me to see how I rank among all my fellow peers, right? That's also a kind of emotion. So once you have outlined all these like target emotions, right, it makes it a lot easier for you to think about what kind of rewards you want to be putting out in the campaign, what kind of narrative you want to be designing. All right, so the next slide, number 4. Describing and profiling your players. So this is where you kind of want to create a persona, and we would usually recommend you to create a name. Oh, okay. Let's say this name could be someone like John or Amy, right? And typically we would suggest about 2 or 3 different personas, right? And then you do some kind of like profiling, very basic stereotyping, right? Unfortunately, right, stereotyping is quite critical when you do such a campaign, right? You need to be able to do the persona profiling so that you know how you can design a relevant campaign. Probably I'll let you talk about the player types.
Oh, okay. So we are basing this on Bartle's 4 player types of Richard Bartle. So this is quite a framework that's been around for a few years, but we find that it's still quite useful for us when we're kind of sitting down with clients for the very first time and kind of asking them about their target group. Who are they wanting to target this game to? So there's killers, achievers, socializers, and explorers. So I guess that maybe before I kind of let you know more about each group, I kind of want to ask a pop quiz. So I think that actually by now it's been conducted about 400,000 times among a general populace. So if we're talking just in terms of like the general populace, not like a specific group of people, like salesmen, for example, then there's one type of player here that it seems to be the most common, and that's about 80%. So maybe I'll just give about 30 seconds in chat for you to guess which one of those 4 that is. So which one is 80% of the general population? Okay, so if any guesses, otherwise I'm going to make Kumar guess.
Actually, what we can do is we can also activate the annotation functions.
All right. Okay. I see some people already putting in chat.
So I would like everyone to actually just turn on your annotation and just start drawing.
Okay.
Probably can you go back to that chart there? Yeah.
Yeah. So you can annotate. So just go to what do you call it? View options. So I'll say like Gametize for Pim is sharing her screen, and then just put once. Yeah. Otherwise, we've seen some webinars where people will like spam that thing, and then we can't tell actually how many people actually guessed.
So just go crazy with that. It should be on the top right, on the top side of the menu. You can see that there's a view options, and you can do like annotation. I'm just doing some drawings of like clubs and diamond, and then socializers would be a heart shape, and explorers would be a spade. Okay.
All right. So I think that
Okay, so I think we are going to just wrap up this quick pop quiz, right? So we see a lot of different answers here, right? Someone thinks it's a killer, someone thinks it's an achiever, socializers, right? So I'm just going to do a very big drawing over here, right? A big circle to tell you which is the biggest group here. Right? Okay, so in blue, that is actually the biggest group, right? That's the socializers, right? Socializers is about 80%, right? And this is based on Richard Butler's player types, right? He has done this survey and research across like hundreds of thousands or even close to 1 million players, right? I'm just going to show, like, draw the percentage of the rest of the other player types, right? So for killers, it's actually 1%, right? For achievers, it's about 10%. And for socializers, it's about 80%. And explorers is about 10%. So I need to just draw the estimated sign so that you will not fault me on my mathematics, because 201. So one of the most surprising thing about like killers is that a lot of people are actually not competitive, right? Actually, there's like just 1% of audience that are just like competitive generally in games, right? So what does that really mean, right? Why do game studios still want to create games for the killers, right? Why do they want to still focus on the killers nonetheless, right? To make it competitive. Kumar, do you know the reason why?
Is it because the killers spend the most time in the game?
Kind of, right? I think we have some answers from Liana, right? They pay to play. Do we have any more answers? Why do game studios like to focus on just the 1% of gamers, even though that's such a small, tiny percentage? So this is an open question to everybody. Right? Just feel free to type in your answers. They spend money. Yes.
money, yeah, I think that's.
They spend a lot of money. So I think the industry benchmark is about like 80% of the revenues will come from that 1% of players, right? So that's the Pareto ratio that we all are familiar with. I think if you just try to apply this statistics to the real world, right? It does feel very much similar as well. And one of the things that I always recommend our clients to do is, right, even if you focus on that 1% of your target audience, right, they might be still achieving your objective for you. So I'll just give one example, right? That hammers example that I just gave earlier about getting your customers to review your hammers. All you really need to focus on is that 1% of the killers, right? They are more interested in getting recognition, maybe. They want to feel like they are being listened to. And in fact, you do not need that the 100% of your customers to be doing that. This 1% of the killers might just be enough for you to get something rolling. So don't try to design something for everybody. That's the main takeaway that I would like to just share with you on this slide for gamification, right? And also understand like what are your target audience type. So for like the sales training, for example, I think it's quite easy to assume that they're most likely going to be killers and achievers, right? Very, very competitive. But if you're going to create a game that you do not quite know who are the target users, right? I would recommend generally to start off with socializers because there's 80% of them, right? So the chances of you going wrong with that is very low. To implement some kind of like competitive spirit to socializers, right? What you can do is you can group them into teams. So teaming is a very powerful way to get the campaign going most of the time. Back to you, Prabin.
All right, so you can see Keith also talked briefly about the personas. So you'll see these come up as well during the case studies that we'll be sharing later. So the last part as well is the design the gamification strategy. So this one is a very much an ongoing effort, meaning that, you know, just because you've done it once doesn't mean that you've done it well, necessarily well. Even if you get it right the first time, it's always something that can improve and will change during the course of the game because, you know, people, the problem statement may change. Your target profile may not be what you expected as well while you're over the course of your game. So you can see here, it's not just PBL points, leaderboards, and what's the B for? Points, achievements, leaderboard. Yeah. But you can see also that it involves things such as like which interactions to use, the tone of voice for your game, what's the storyline, what's the visual style as well. So that's something that I'll also be sharing more about during the case studies. So here's also the design strategy. This one, I think that I'll just leave it for Keith, and if you want to explain, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, through the course of like creating hundreds of campaigns, right? We find that as much as we always try to create something that's very intrinsically motivating, right? It is really hard to avoid giving out generous extrinsic rewards to just hook the users in, right? And the second thing that is quite obvious is that your content needs to be very, very appealing, needs to be fresh. Of course, you need a solution like Gametize, right? Or even other gamification platforms to allow you to easily distribute content. One thing that a lot of our customers always kind of like forget is to keep the experience as easy as possible, right? To make it really simple for you to catch your first Pokemon monster, for example. And of course, keep in mind, right? End of the day, emotions is something that you need to keep thinking about, right? What kind of target emotions you are trying to get to that has to be relevant to the audience profile. And so the blue fonts that you see over here, they are pretty much what is required as a basic ingredient, right? The green fonts that you see over here are the target objectives. So you need to be able to use those things in the blue to get to the green, right? For example, right, tribalism, right? You need to be able to create a community, right? Community is a very powerful driver of getting users to come back in, right? They come back in because they see a collective sense of belonging. They come back in because they see similar audience type of similar interests. And you need to get them to move to intrinsic motivation. So there's only so much like rewards you can actually provide, right? At the end of the day, right, the users have to come back in because they feel like this is what they really want to do, right? This really has helped them grow. Thirdly, right, you need to get to the social behaviors. So getting them to do like to interact with one another, getting them to share things even beyond outside of your campaign. Right, target behaviors that shows that they are being engaged, right? And with all these things that you set up in a gamification platform, right, you need to be, you have a very good pool of data that allows you to do your analysis. And through all this like data, you're able to do a lot of testings, right? So I recommend you to actually do your testing from day one, right? You need to use a solution that allows you to create your first gamification campaign within a day or so. Still on this topic, right? I just wanted to share with you really quickly on what really keeps people motivated what we have found why users keeps coming back to gamification platforms. If you're aware of this particular psychologist and this book called Flow Theory, it's written by a Hungarian psychologist called Csikszentmihalyi, right? So he talks a lot about why people, what really motivates people, right? Is it pleasure or is it enjoyment? So what are the differences between like enjoyment and pleasure? So I just would like to get everyone to just type out over in the chat, right? What do you think really motivates people, right? Is it enjoyment or is it pleasure? So I'm just gonna type in the chat room. All right, so I think we are seeing a lot of people typing enjoyment, right? So according to Csikszentmihalyi, right, why do people, what really makes people grow, right, is the sense of enjoyment, right? Because they enjoy something when they feel like they're getting better at something and when they're growing, right? And that's a huge drive for motivation, right? As compared to just pleasure, right? Pleasure is typically things that keeps you alive, right? You could be drinking water, you could be having fun, right? Just eating or just doing other things, right? Just things that keeps you alive, right? But what really is enjoyable is things that makes you feel like you're growing. So at all times, right, always keep in mind your gamification campaign creates a sense of growth for your target user. So if they feel like they are growing over here, they are more likely to enjoy the experience, and that keeps your campaign more sticky. Okay, so I think we have done enough of like theories, and I think we can just hop on to our first case study.
Yeah. All right. So I think that we'll be sharing the slides with you as well towards the end. So don't worry if you see the links and it's like, oh, you feel like everything's going very fast. But we do have some templates over at gametize.com/template. So you can see this one here. We've created a generic version of the case study that I'm about to share with you. So just for your knowledge, these case studies, we've made it generic. So we have not included any identifiable data. That's why it seems quite generic. But I'll just share with you kind of a few use cases. So this one's more about L&D as well as a virtual program or event. So this is a client that has been with us for a few years already. And typically what they like to use our app for was to use it as a part of their kind of like companion buddy for their 2-day internal event. And then they would also use it for the period of pre and post engagement. But of course, with COVID-19, they couldn't do the events as before. So they decided instead to pivot to a 6-month period. So of course, you know, this has its own problems. How are they going to continually engage their participants throughout this 6-month period, especially since this program isn't mandatory at all. So you can see that, what they wanted to do was to encourage continuous learning within the organization. And then as well as kind of like let them know what type of resources the employee can access, you know, whether it's in the Gametize app itself or whatever else the company is providing as well. So I think Kumar is quite familiar with this as well. So feel free to chime in if you have anything to share. So the KPIs in this case were the login rate and participation rate. So the reason that I think it's quite important to set your KPIs is to make sure that, you know, you're actually tracking it throughout the course of your project. Because if you don't have your KPIs set, then how will you know like whether your project is even successful or not? Okay, so the narrative here was kind of like a monopoly narrative. So the rationale behind this, apparently, it was kind of like to just give a bit of progression throughout the game and to kind of simulate a sense of, you know, the going through each card and completing the events. But you can see here what I wrote was that it changed requirements, evolving requirements. So what that meant in this case was that, you know, Monopoly has a very specific set of number of blocks that you can go through. So at first they were very set on like, you know, adhering exactly to this, but they realized that that wasn't really scalable, especially since so many things change on the fly. So what they decided to do was just kind of like keep the narrative there while kind of, you know, not adhering completely to the narrative of monopoly. So that's something that I think that is quite useful to learn as well, where, you know, you can set it, but then as the game goes on, you'll realize that requirements will change. Okay, so I'll share with you kind of what they started out with and kind of how they changed throughout the project itself. So they had a lot of content based on their learning pillars. So for example, it'd be kind of like, you know, of all the pillars, so for example, a pillar might be customer service. Which one do you find the most useful? And then they also have things kind of like, you know, in the trend of digital, what's one thing that you've noticed? So for example, in banking, a lot of people were saying like, okay, now I see that contactless payment or digital banking is making more of a trend as well during this current time. So they're asking users to kind of like give their insights during this time. Okay, so there's also something going yeah.
May I suggest you load up your PDF instead, and so that we can zoom into the images as well.
All right, sure.
So in the meantime, right, I just want to remind everyone, right, if you have any questions, right, or you have any takeaway so far, or any things that you want to share, right, please just put it on the chat, right, so that everyone can learn from one another. The second thing is that I hope some of you are already interacting with the game that we are setting up for you, right? In fact, I think Prapim will be able to run through that in a second or so, right? It is called, I'm just going to put up the link again over here, right? So please feel free to check it out.
Yeah, we'll be running through that kind of halfway through the session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back to you.
All right, so I kind of wanted to share as well that, you know, we have I think if any of you have played the webinar game already, you kind of get a sense of what our platform can do. We do have very basic challenges, things such as, you know, uploading a photo, sharing that, and then, you know, we have a lot of clients asking, can you do a drag and drop? Can you do a memory card game, etc. Which that's not available on our platform, but then what you can do is leverage other solutions onto the platform. So for example, this particular client, what they had was some activities based on speaker sessions. So the speakers, similar to what we're doing now, would encourage people to go into the app to kind of play the game based on, you know, the content that they're covering. And one of them was like a memory game for esports, because the person speaking was in the esports space. And then it would just be like very random things such as like, you know, match the cards and then giving more information on the esports industry.
Prapim, I think your screen is not, it's still on the Google Slides.
Oh.
Just like, you know, yeah. Okay, while Prapim is working on that, I just thought like to just take on some of the questions that Thomas and Sukan has shared, right? So what are our thoughts on negative reinforcement? Typically, we don't enjoy, or we don't recommend our clients to think about penalizing the users, right? Because that requires a whole new set of like design. You need to take into account of negative feelings, right? And if you know, like every time you have a negative feeling, right, you need 7 positive compliments or praises to make you neutralize the negative feeling. So we try not to recommend that. We subscribe more to the school of positive psychology. But that's it, right? We do have clients that use that kind of framework for a design. We have seen that before, right? And typically that is used for maybe like, I think the example I'm going to give is actually a cybersecurity example. So this client actually will penalize points when a user clicks on the phishing email. So so this negative reinforcement actually works quite well over here, right? Because the impact of them doing something like that is very, very critical. So they really needed to introduce this negative reinforcement. As for Sukan's question about how to design gamification that attract Gen X or early Gen Y, again, it's all about profiling, right? So in fact, generation profiling is very difficult, right? I would recommend you to think about the psychographic profiling, right? I think about the motivations of that particular subset group in the Gen S or Gen Y. Okay, Prapim, back to you.
Okay, I think I got the screen to work now, so apologies for that. Okay, so there's also a share of like manual integration, but just to share, this is not an actual integration. So what they did was that they have a learning platform, something like Linda, for example, and then what they wanted people to do, as you can see here, is to log in and complete micro courses on that learning platform, kind of just to encourage them to, you know, continuously learn and upskill themselves, even like, you know, during this whole period where everyone's not able to kind of go into office. And then they would get 10 points on the platform for every single course they completed. This was actually very manual, so that's just for full disclosure. So what they would do is that they would send us a list every week, or I think every few days, of the participants, and then we would have to manually award them the points. But that's just another idea of what they did. Another one that they did as well is a bingo challenge. So you can see that that's just a sample, generic sample of the type of events that you could click off, check off for bingo, and then you would upload it to the platform. Okay, so another one I wanted to share was that they did something like a pass the paper challenge. Not sure how familiar any of you are with it. To be honest, I only heard of this myself when the client suggested it. So
We should do.
Sorry?
We should do this in Gametize as well.
Yeah, I think that we'll have to try and do this in Gametize. So essentially, if you're not familiar what the game Pass the Paper Challenge is, this is just the generic example from this link here. What you do is you video yourself like with a piece of paper, and then you simulate passing it on to the next person. So we utilize the video challenge for them to upload this, and then they would get 80 points for doing that. But I think that from what I understood was that, you know, people can be quite camera shy. So despite, you know, the fact it was worth 80 points, they realized in the first week or so, people weren't really uploading. I think it's kind of like, yeah, camera shy being one thing. So they actually added bonus points to it as well to get more people on board. And then
are you aware if the bonus points did change any behaviors?
I am not sure, to be honest. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's
actually, I can answer that. Yeah, so the bonus points, once they had actually implemented it, we actually saw an increment in the number of users actually logging into the application itself. So yes, there was a positive impact when they have brought in the bonus points.
Yeah.
And of course, I believe the rewards are also very attractive as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, were they? I hope so. Okay, so they also had a daily login challenge. So I think that they wanted this to simulate, you know, when you play many apps and video games and you're getting a challenge just to log in daily. Because some of the contents were quite static, so they wanted people to kind of have something to do that was new and fresh every single day. So you would get 10 points just for logging in and then clicking this particular get my points. Okay. And then there was also a referral challenge. So you had to put in the name of the person that you wanted to refer. But once again, this full disclosure, this was completely manual, meaning that on the backend system, the Gametize team actually had to go check. Like, so for example, I referred Keith, but Gametize, Kumar needs to check whether Keith is actually logged in. If he's logged in, then both Keith and I would get points for the referral. And then lastly, they also wanted to have the team elements. So this is something that I think Keith has brought up where, you know, how can I kind of simulate competition without it feeling like, you know, this is a very kind of like when I think that most of my audience are probably not killers. So in this case, what they did was that they created a team function where, you know, you can compete in team challenges. Okay, so you can see that the rewards here, I think Kumar, maybe you can elaborate a bit more if I'm not right or I kind of missed anything. So they had vouchers, but what actually happened was that I think that during the course of the game itself, they actually ran out of vouchers. But then they realized people were still playing. So at that point, I think they kind of realized, okay, this is good because it means that people are actually intrinsically motivated to play, despite the fact that, you know, there are no vouchers left. And they also said,
or they are expecting new prices to come up.
so that's another thing, which I'll cover in the next case study. That's a very common thing as well that might happen. They also have a player of the month, team of the month, and most creative team prize. So this was something that is voted for by the rest of the teams, rest of the players. And then at the end of the, if I'm correct, campaign, that's when they would award them the extra points. Okay, so not only is the game content important, I think that the promotion is important, because obviously if you don't promote your game can be really good, but no one knows about it, then there might as well not. So this is always a very important part. So initially what happened was they actually were only using EDMs. And then even then, those EDMs were not being tracked. So in that case, later on, it was very difficult to actually tell, like, were these EDMs actually effective, because they weren't tracking it. So that's something that you need to always consider whenever you're doing any sort of outreach or engagement for your game. And if anything, despite the fact that I shared all of the content in the beginning just now of what they did, they actually realized that engagement in the first 3 weeks was actually really low. As you can see here, 100 users with 534 completions, when their goal was actually 500 users. And technically it was open to everybody in the organization, which is an even bigger number of a few thousand users. So what they needed to do was kind of like, how do I fix this very quickly? So you can see here, the participation was really low in the first 3 weeks with 100 users. So what they actually did was that, they got together, kind of brainstormed a little bit, and then what they came up with was these virtual sessions. So the virtual sessions in this case were the hook for people to not only know that the app exists, but also to actually onboard the app. So what happened was that actually already independently of the app, there were webinars being held every week. And this was all sorts of subject matter experts. So they had some people on kind of like grooming, how to kind of like groom yourself to make yourself look presentable during Zoom sessions, conferences, more about esports as well, and kind of like, everything under the sun, essentially. So what they decided to do was to kind of bring the virtual sessions onto the game itself, meaning that similar to what I was saying, the speakers would speak about the app and be kind of like showing all of the events on the, so for example, like, while I'm chatting, I'll be like, okay, now let's go into the app, and then we'll complete a few activities there. And then they also did the Q&A sessions on the app. So you can see that within the week, the completion rate really increased to 530 new completions and 60 new signups. And then actually by the end of the engagement, so it's ending this September, so in a few days actually, they managed to get over 500 players by the end. So in that case, that was really the hook that made it much more successful than it was initially. Because what happened was that kind of people realized that, oh, okay, I know this app exists, and then now that I've finished playing the rest of the games for the speakers, I'll go in and check the rest of the contents as well. Yeah. So another option is kind of to consider is re-engagement. So we have the push notification pop-up alerts. That's something that they really leveraged on. And if anything, we get a case sometimes where clients are a little bit kind of, oh, we don't really want to annoy the users too much. But sometimes users, in this case, were actually asking, like, can you tell us by the push notifications when you're giving us new content so I can log in straight away and I can actually like get the points. So yeah, always think about, how will I continuously re-engage and inform users of the new contents happening in the app. Yeah, so definitely the success towards the end of this was not by, accident, it was by design. The team really worked hard with us every single week to ensure that, the app and the contents are doing well. So they really checked in every week, saw like, the analytics. That's how they knew in the first 3 weeks it was just not doing very well, and kind of like what to do from there. So what they did was also survey people to understand kind of like, what do you actually want to see in the app? Okay, so yeah, they have a feedback option as well. So that's where you get the idea of kind of like what people are liking about the app and what they wanted to kind of, improve. So there's the benchmark. So apparently for non-mandatory initiatives, it's 10%, which is actually really low. So this one's 12.4, which I think that, at first it doesn't seem that high, but I think that you always have to compare with the benchmark as well. Okay, So that's the first case study. So perhaps maybe we'll kind of go into the game right now and kind of just take a look at the answers that you put there. Yeah, are there any questions in the chat? Okay, so I see Kumar's been helping to answer the questions. So before I move on to the next case study, I think that what I want to do is kind of just go through the answers in the game that we shared in the webinar session. So if you haven't done so already, this is your last chance to do it before I kind of go through the answers. So, so you can see here that I did this yesterday. So that's why I can see all the answers already. So how often do you go into office nowadays, if at all? So it looks like most of us go in less than once a month. So some people actually still go in every day from what I can see. So just to share with you, for Gametize, we're like completely work from home right now. So I go in like less than once a month. Okay, so for the issues that Xavier identified for remote working challenges, we asked you to choose which one is your biggest concern. So for me, I actually wrote loneliness and lack of human interaction. I think my cat is my coworker nowadays, but other people put things such as interruptions. So I think hopefully you didn't hear the construction work just now. So that's something that I think a lot of us face as well. Okay, so if you're still going to the office, what are some of the reasons why? Okay, so I can see for a meeting is quite common, and then the next common one is distractions at home. Harking back to the last question, then the third one is access to tools. So that's something that I think a lot of our clients are facing as well, that you know, they still need to go into office because, you know, their desktop is hooked up to the intranet there. But at the same time, you know, they might be the only person in office that particular day. Okay, so what's one issue in your organization that you're looking to solve in this new normal? So I'll just kind of go through here. So you can see that this is the activity feed for our platform. So you can see Maria put lack of appropriate online tools. MK said define processes for the new normal, lack of team bonding. So that's definitely one that I feel has been quite pertinent, especially for Gametize as well. Yeah. So if you want to kind of look more on what other people have said, feel free to go into show more completions and you can read it there. Okay, so what are some ways that your organization's adapted to working from home? That's all. Okay, so what does that mean in that case? Maria, maybe you can let us know in chat. And then, yeah, it's making work from home default and working, going to office on needs basis. So that's what's happened for us as well. Okay. So I'll just go through this later on. So I think Crystal also said virtual events. That's one thing that we'll want to cover. Okay, and then lastly, what have you learned about yourself? Okay, so MK, can achieve much more than what you have ever imagined regarding a combination of work from home and homeschooling. So that's kind of a good and bad point. So I think that what people have identified is actually sometimes they feel like they're doing more work while they're at home because there's kind of no, what do you call it, segregation anymore on, you know, when is my lunchtime, when and there's no commute time as well. Okay, so speaking of commuting time, I think I'll just share the next case study. So we actually have 3 case studies, but for the interest of time, I might kind of share the last one after the webinar is ended. So if you have any time afterwards you want to stay on and listen about the 3rd case study, please feel free to stay on. Okay, so
the last one is the onboarding one, right?
Yeah, so that one's about onboarding. So this one is a work from home one. Okay, so just to share what this company does. This is a company that, what they actually did was they didn't need our inputs at all for this. They actually just went to gametize.com and they subscribed. And then we only found out about this later and then we interviewed them about the case study. So it is possible to do this without like, you know, what do you call it, us involved or any other gamification studio, as long as you have someone who knows how to create the content and is able to generate it consistently. So this company is kind of like they do BPO, so they do the process outsourcing. So if you need to do like customer service or technical support, then you can, they can essentially do that for you. So you can see that after, so this was in Malaysia. So I think that in Malaysia, if I'm not wrong, if there's any Malaysian people in the chat, I have anything wrong, feel free to correct me. What they needed to do was, I think, was it in March, they had the lockdown, and then suddenly like everyone had to work from home. So that meant that actually in their case, 75% of their staff worked from home, while the other 25 still had to go in because of the equipment being hooked to the internet. So they really pride themselves on employee happiness. They're like, always doing very fun things, company lunches, Zumba, etc. And so they realize that, okay, now we can't do any of that. How do we get them to still feel connected and know they don't have a fear of missing out? So they actually realized that regardless of whether you're working from home or working in the office, both groups were actually unhappy. So the reason being, if you're working from home, you felt like you were missing out on things, even though there was nothing happening in the office anyway. And then for those going into office, they felt kind of like very unhappy in the sense that, why do those other people get to work from home and I don't? Like, I don't feel like I'm being taken care of either. So they kind of wanted to instill that, okay, everybody, we're all on the same page. We're all still connected to each other. We're still, we still care for you even during this time. Okay, so I'll just share with you the contents that they did. So they had mostly non-work related. So when they did the surveys, they realized people don't want to care. They don't want to know anything about work at all. Maybe they can log in and learn about the company memos, all that, but mostly they just want to find something to have fun with. Okay, so what they did was they had a daily dose. So actually, since this was a customer service company, it needs to be on 24/7. So people are actually working weekends and shifts as well. So the engagement team had to work really hard to make sure there's something every single day. And then even then, it might only be like a very small group of players, but they still wanted to target those. So they had a kind of a pulse check every morning and evening. So it's literally just a poll to ask you how you're feeling today. So what they wanted to do was kind of just to simulate, how originally the company would have their managers do the daily huddle, where it's kind of like, how's everyone today? Okay, everyone's doing well, let's go to our stations now. And they also had a lot of like other themed challenges, asking people, like what movie are you watching? What shows are you watching now that you're like at home? So MCO, I think that's the no movement control order, if I'm not wrong. Day 42. So most of us are spending our free time binging on Netflix now. Share with us what you're watching on Netflix. So that's just one example. It might also be like, what book are you reading? Or we're scheduling a watch party at lunchtime, and we're watching this movie here. So one thing they really did was that the team that created this content, really knew their target audience because it was very localized. So every single time they got these, created these challenges, they made sure, okay, if we're scheduling a watch party, we need to make sure that the movie is something that, people actually want to watch. Okay, so they also had kind of like trending topics. So, can you film yourself making dalgona coffee? Can you film yourself doing the wash your hand challenge? And or share like beauty hacks, share your brunch, share what your workouts are, or like what's your tips. But you can see in this case, this person uploaded a photo of their cat instead of an actual workout. So that's something that I think is quite common as well. Like people will just upload random photos. So I'll kind of share with you later on, like what they did to mitigate that as well.
I think the most beautiful thing about this particular campaign is that the content is generated by the employees. It's not just from a top-down direction, right? It's from all over. And that is a more scalable way to do audience engagement in the long term.
Yeah. So so there's two parts of that. The first one was that they actually surveyed the employees every single 2-3 weeks to ask them, like, what do you want to see on the app? And so that's the way that employees contributed to the content. But of course, the second part of the content generation is coming from the submissions themselves. That's where, I can go in and see what Keith and Kumar are doing for the day. And that's like a very easy way to kind of scale content creation, because it's not just you as the admin creating the contents. So while initially, they didn't really plan to do like a lot of wellness, physical and mental well-being challenges, I think that, you know, they realized that that was just the natural progression of their game. That's something that they wanted people to kind of learn about, because, you know, people were feeling very, you know, cabin fever, not able to exercise or eat as well as before. So they would ask things like, you know, what did you learn about yourself during quarantine? Do you have any tips you can share with us? What have you been doing during this time? So it'd be informational. So for example, like they would give you the meal planning kit, but then it would also be behavioral or something interactive. So take a photo or video of yourself working out, take a photo of your meal plan for the week, or like take a photo of yourself drinking water and also like having your vitamin for the day, or sharing an inspirational quote. So you can see this is something that one of the users shared as well. So that's another example of how well this campaign did in terms of like user generated content. Okay, so this is, you know, they wanted to still kind of pepper in, you know, company updates as well. So they would hold like, you know, skincare session webinars and, you know, notes on what's happening in Malaysia. So as I shared, this was the client that said that they realized employees don't want something just informational. They want to be able to interact with something as well. So this is a good example. So this is talking about like, have you met our HR chatbot? And this is how you can access the chatbot. If you've already spoken to the chatbot, just click here and then you'll get points. So it can be as simple as that to make it interactive. And then what they realized as well was that users, a lot of them were very motivated in the sense that they would complete all the base challenges, but they still wanted a way to kind of earn extra points. So what they did was flash challenges. So I think if you're familiar with, you know, any sort of shopping, Lazada, Shopee, you get a lot of those flash deals. This is essentially what it was. They would kind of announce that, you know, there's flash challenges coming very soon onto the platform, and then publish it only for 3 hours and then expire it after 3 hours. So people would have to like, you know, really be aware of the challenges and going in and earning the extra points that way. Okay, so for the rewards, actually, it wasn't as much as the years previously, because I think that they didn't have as much budget, but also because I think, you know, in the current situation, it was also a lot harder to actually get the rewards. So what Keith shared is quite common, what we have in our gamification behaviors. People tend to, like if they see the rewards in the reward store and they don't think that it's particularly, you know, enticing. So for example, in this case, they would have cash vouchers and insurance merchandise only. Then what some people will do is just like save up the points in the hopes that another better reward is coming. But sometimes there just isn't any. And then what do you do when that happens? So what this client decided to do was actually, they're going to host another virtual party in, I think, the end of the year, kind of like their D&D. And then what they're going to do with the surplus points is going to convert them to like chances for their company's lucky draw. So I think that's quite a clever way to do that. So it's kind of like, you know, they know that at least the points are being used for something, instead of like, you know, the campaign ends and they have like 800 surplus points they're not going to do anything with. And an SAPS, so I think I haven't covered this. I'll cover this now actually. So this stands for Status, Access, Power Stuff. It's a reward framework where, you know, you have rewards rather than just vouchers or, you know, insurance, health, merchandise. They have something that gives a sense of recognition or reward to the user as well. So what this client did was that if particular submissions were good, what they would actually do is either feature it on their company's social media channels or in the office, like print it out and then like, you know, have it as a giant poster. So in that case, you know, they know that people in this company, they really like recognition. So this was a particularly good reward for them as well. Okay, so yeah, like I said, promotion is very important. Your game needs to be promoted to actually like perform. So things such as WhatsApp groups, company internet line, desktops, and then also guidelines on like how to kind of play the game for users. But what I really wanted to bring across was the amusement ambassadors. So we always encourage people to kind of like, bring in heroes for the platform to get people on board. So if I know, for example, my manager or my trusted colleague is playing this, then I want to get on board as well. So who these amusement ambassadors were in the company, they're highly engaged, so naturally highly engaged individuals who are performing their duties on top of their normal job scope. And what they did was they actually gave the amusement ambassadors a sense of like personal stake in it, kind of like, can you get your team on board and can you get your team to kind of play the game? So that amusement ambassadors felt kind of like invested that, oh, I have to make sure that, I'm able to engage them because this is actually part of their KPIs as an AA at the end of the year. So some of them might call it out during their daily morning huddle, show demos to colleagues on how to onboard the game. And the AAs would kind of see like, okay, how are my colleagues interacting with the game? I'll provide that feedback to the administrators on what's working well and what's not. So for example, they would even ask like, the administrators to pull out reports to kind of analyze how their teammates were doing in particular.
Yeah, in fact, these amusement ambassadors, they could have their own separate game as well, exclusive game where their KPIs are completely different, and the kind of rewards they're looking for, perhaps is like maybe a chance to have lunch with the CEO, right? It's not a reward that a lot of people want, really, right? Coming from a CEO myself, right? But there could be some very motivated individuals, right? They could be very, very keen on such very exclusive rewards. Back to you.
Okay, so I'll just show you kind of the numbers as well. So it did pretty well. So you can see that, the number of players is 529 active. So active meaning they've actually like, gone and completed something, not just signed up. But you can see that the number of completions is very high. It's almost 26,000 compared to the number of players. And even kind of like when the game has already slowed down when I checked it last, because they actually kind of stopped the content creation process about a few weeks back. Even then, like, as recently as a week ago, there's still people completing the game. So one thing that people gave feedback for was that, this isn't seen as just another work application. It's quite fun. That's where I can go in and kind of feel connected to my my colleagues. I can see that my manager is playing this as well alongside me. Yeah, so you can see that they actually didn't have any baseline on how well they expected it to perform. But you can see on the first day, there was a 61.97 completion rate, which actually is like really good. I think that for something non-mandatory, I think as you saw with the last one, usually it's like even 50% in some cases can be quite impressive. And then, yeah, like I said, the advocacy of the amusement ambassadors, I think really worked. So I think that one thing you can always consider is having like, that kind of small group of advocates that you want to build who are the people that will get other players or other employees in the organization on board. Okay, so while we were talking to the lady that created this game, she felt that there's still a drop-off after launch. So meaning that, instead of checking every day, people were checking 2 to 3 times a month instead. And then another problem was that actually after a while, the teams that created the game started to have like a kind of content block, meaning that they were struggling to come up with content for every day, especially since they're a very lean team. I think it was like 2, 3 people at any one time. So what they wanted to do was that they also wanted to avoid fatalist effect. So what that is that, if the players are only checking in 2 to 3 times a month, then they go into the app and they realize that they've missed out on days worth of content. There might be a small subgroup of people who are very motivated and complete all the app remaining challenges, but the rest of them probably are just like, okay, I'm not going to bother and I might as well just give up. So they wanted to avoid that as well. So that's why currently right now they're actually kind of regrouping and going to relaunch it with a slightly different like schedule. Okay, so another thing that I think I wanted to bring up was the communication with players. If you launch any kind of gamification strategy, this is something that you will always encounter where, engagement team where you meet with many unexpected behaviors from users. So you can see, for example, this was not just one, several people wrote in like with saying this, like the correct answer is actually Everest. So, you know, you need to make sure you test your game and get everything correct. People are going to get upset otherwise. And then some people got upset as well with like, you know, missing the flash challenges or missing the cutoff date to redeem the rewards. And some people actually would like farm points. So I think if you don't know what that is, essentially some challenges could be completed several times. So for example, you know, upload a photo of yourself working out every day. But some people might upload a photo of, you know, a blank wall and submit that 10 times in a row and get 100 points. So the team had to kind of deal with all this as well. They did a lot of moderation to make sure that, you know, like all the good quality content was still being on the app, and, you know, all these kind of bogus completions were being deleted as well. But that is definitely a lot of work that I think that you need to consider when you're doing any gamification strategy, is that, you know, how are you going to kind of upkeep it during the runtime of your content campaign as well. Okay, so I think that for the lack of time, what I'll do is that if there's anybody interested in learning about this particular case study, you can stay on after. Otherwise, what I'm going to do, I think, is just to show you the platform and kind of like, okay, how do you actually create all of this content on the platform itself? Okay, so shall we do maybe a little bit of a Q&A? Is there time?
Yes. So I think we're running a little behind time. So we could possibly run the platform demo in just about 5 minutes. Just give a very quick brief how they can use the template, set up a template. Yeah. And then after that, we could wrap up, and we could continue the session after 4:30 for anyone that wants to stay on for more questions or to hear out our last case study.
Sure. Okay, so I'll make this quick for everybody. So most of you have already played this game, and what I've gotten people to do as well is to actually predict which player type will be most common in today's webinar session. So you can see I already predicted. Okay, so everyone's gone with socializer because we said socializer is the most common. And then what we also got people to do was to guess, kind of take a look at which player type they think they are. So I usually get Explorer whenever I do this. So I'm just going to say I am. So you can see I got an achievement just now for doing that. And then Explorer is 4. So that's still a small number. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the outcome for this to be correct as Explorer. So you'll kind of see how this works on the Gametize platform now. So you can see that this is my admin dashboard for this particular game. So you can see as well that this is like all of the image, title, description. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to my player type and then predict which player type will be most common. I'm going to just set the outcome right now. Okay, so you can see this is how I set up the challenge with the image, challenge name, challenge description, etc. Okay, so if anything, I'm just going to double check, make sure that I got this correct. Okay, so as prediction results, and then press save. All right, so for anybody that made any prediction in this particular prediction challenge, you'll see in a bit that if you predicted Explorer, you would have gotten some extra points in which you can use it to redeem some rewards on the platform. So we have free coffee redeemable in maybe 2 years when our office opens, or technically we're open for visitors already. Or there's a Gametize training session as well that you can redeem for 115 points. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is just how to do the rewards and all of this as well, and kind of like what gamification elements we have on our platform, just for your knowledge. So you can see here there's rewards. So you can see if anything, actually no one's redeemed anything yet. And then that's where I can edit the rewards and see how many points the reward is, how many is available, as well as the description. Okay, so one thing I can encourage you to do is to actually create a new one entirely here. And then you can select from the template. So what I shared with you today, the two case studies, the working from home case study and the learning engagement are actually already available on the platform as generic versions of the template. So for example, the work from home game is here. And then you can use the template. Okay, so if I start the free trial, I'll be able to see so the project code as well. So you can see this is empty. So if you remember, I asked you to fill in the project code here when I asked you to access the game remote. Or if you were using the app, you would enter the word remote in the search bar. That is what the project code is. So for example, I would try work from home game. Okay, so you can see that actually I can create the challenges quite easily and then publish it straight away. So one thing that I wanted to share was that you don't need to do any coding to kind of create a game on our platform, which is what some of our admins have been kind of, using Gametize for. They said, thankfully, like, you don't have to do any coding for this as well. So
can we show the different types of challenges before we wrap up?
Yep, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a challenge here where I get you to, let's say, do the pulse check-in as what you saw for the case study where they were asking people to kind of like let them know how they were feeling for today. Okay, so you can see the challenge image as well. So you can either upload your own image, but if you're wanting to do something very quick, then you can just do it like that as well, where it's the Pixabay image library. Okay, so I'll just choose this for now. Okay, and then add another answer. All right, so what you can do, for example, in a poll is if you want someone to get 100 points just for saying awesome, 50, and then 10. So another thing to make sure is, you get your points in order, meaning you test it properly. I'll show you what this means later. So message to display if user selects this option for awesome. Okay, and then you can also award bonus points. And then in this case, this can only be done once per player. But if you want to, for some of the challenges, you can set it to be done every day. So like, share with us your tip of the day. And then that can be done every 24 hours.
So we strongly recommend you to just sign up on gametize.com, go with the trial, even in extension, just feel free to write into us, right? And I think the best way to really design any gamification campaign is really to just get started, right? Even whether or not it's on a pen or paper, on a very simple solution like Gametize.
All right, so actually this is pretty much ready to go. What I can do is I can just publish it straight away, and then I can get the link here, share the project, and then I can actually copy this link. And what I can do is send it in chat. So technically you guys can play it as well, although there won't be much to play right now because I haven't published everything. So you can see that this is how it looks. And then if you, have a template in mind, you can just use this and just edit, and then you're pretty much ready to go. So for example, this is just the confirmation challenge just to get you to kind of click something and ensure that, you actually are here for the day.
Okay, problem. I think we have shown enough the platform demo. I can take over for the remaining part, so you can take a quick break, right? If it's okay, I'll just do screen sharing on my side. Okay, so so you have seen how the platform works, right? I recommend everyone again to just get your hands dirty, right? And you could some of the image resources that is really integrated in our platform is we have a Pixabay integration, and we also have a lot of like our own images as well, right? There are some resources that you can use from anywhere else, free pick, Platicons. And on the topic of rewards, right? Just do keep in mind that you should always try to look at thinking of two different types of rewards. One is basically whatever that's on the reward store, and the other one is achievements. And when it comes to achievements, right, just keep in mind achievements do not have a points attached to that, right? And rewards are things that you could actually attribute certain points. And on the topic again on what kind of rewards that you should be coming up with, right? You know, there's the SAPS stuff, right? So the best kind of rewards are what money can buy, right? So just do keep that in mind. And I do have a mix of different types of rewards. Some of them could be extrinsic, some of them could be intrinsic. You should have a good balance. Okay, so we are near the finishing line right now, right? So I just want to, again, also emphasize that if you don't remember anything about today's webinar, right? By statistics, right, only 30% of stuff can be remembered by every one of you. So if there's just one thing that I would like you to remember is that you should be creating a happy experience, right? Gamification equals happyification. Gamification is not magic, it is a process, right? There are no rules to fun. So you should do a lot of testing, right? You should do a lot of try and errors and speak to a lot of different users to try to create a design. And you know, create emotions, create storylines, right? Bring in heroes where possible, get your management involved, get the most important people involved, right? They could be the ambassadors, they could be the CEOs, they could be the C-suite, right? Do a lot of regular, fresh content. And use the 5D framework. It is a very, in fact, the 5D framework is something that is very similar to design thinking, if you realize by now, right? It's all about thinking about the user, what kind of problems that you're trying to solve with changes to the user's behavior. And once you've done that, right, we have some kind of a scorecard, right, that you can actually, you're able to assess how good a game is, right? You can find at corp.gametize.com/scorecard. And if you need inspirations, I think, you know, the best way to do something is to steal ideas, right? Don't try to start from scratch, steal like a boss. So these are some of the other toolkits that you can use in order to design a very legitimate campaign. And you know, we like to use Google Slides to do collaborative content creation, right? If you are looking to do some kind of like animations, right? Go to Go Animate. I like doing GIFs, really. Right? I think animated GIFs can have a really nice impact on any kind of platforms. And I think the last point, right? Someone who can do it full time and do lots of testing, right? We find that the best campaigns when there is a dedicated accountable manager, right? Who has strong vested interest to see success in the project. And this person is very, very good at really doing a lot of testing, right? So do find that person, whoever it is in your company. Right, these are some of the references that we use, right? So I think when it comes to gamification resources, there's a dozen out there in the market, but these are some of our favorite ones. And of course, I strongly recommend going to academy.gametize.com, right? It's actually a project by Prabin herself. And last but not least, I would like to leave you with this quote, right? The opposite of play is not work, it is depression. Dr. Stuart Brown is the head of Serious Gaming Institute, right? Sorry, can't remember what his exact designation is, but he has spent a lot of time actually working on researching on how games can be used to improve and grow a person as well. So, right, this is our little bit of like gamification that we're doing over here, right? You have to write an email to us if you want the slides, right? That allows us to keep in touch with you and also for us to forward you the link itself. I believe Prabin actually embedded the link of the PDF in one of the badges in the game as well earlier, right? So if you have completed all the challenges, you should be able to get the deck as well. So that's a little bit of an Easter egg for you. So with that, right, before we move on to the overtime content that we are going to run later, right? If you have any questions at all, please feel free to write into inquiry@gametize.com or even academy@gametize.com. So please feel free to connect with us, right, on LinkedIn, right? you should be able to find Prapim and Keith, or even Kuma on Gametize via LinkedIn. So with that, I'll hand the mic back to Prapim to do the wrapping up.
All right, so I'm aware of everyone's time. So if you need to go, feel free to. If anyone here is really interested in the onboarding case study, please stay on. I'll be talking about it now. So no worries, you know, I'm not gonna be too, I'm not gonna be hurt if you really need to go, understand. So I'll just share my screen now. All right.
So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that needs to leave, right? No hard feelings at all, right? So please, thank you so much for your time here, right? And we'll stay in touch, right? So for everyone that's staying behind, right, we really appreciate your presence here.
Okay, and then I think that if you also have time afterwards, I know some people have questions. If you know, you're able to stay on, feel free to do that as well. And then we can answer some of your questions from there. Okay, so this is a new hire onboarding case study. So this one was created by one of our enterprise clients, but as we said, this client is actually very self-sufficient nowadays. They're not even, they don't really ask us for advice on how to create a game. They already know what to do. We just provide the support when needed. So what happened with this was that their new hire, they have a very structured process of, like, you know, the first day you come in, you get your laptop, you talk to your line manager, and then like throughout the 6 months, they have a very structured process on how to do the onboarding. But of course, now, you know, a few months ago, they wrote into us and they said, like, we need to make this completely virtual. You know, just to let you know, like, you know, this is, so we'll probably be emailing you more questions as we go on, because they said that, you know, now these new hires, they're not even able to go step into the office for the first day. They can't meet other new hires. They can't even meet their manager face to face. They probably feel quite disconnected. So how do we ensure that they're still able to kind of feel that, you know, they're part of the company? So I think that Keith mentioned the use of GIFs. So this client actually did use a lot of GIFs. So I kind of want to give a caveat that, you know, probably at home it's fine because everyone's working from home now. But in the case of this client, sometimes they would use it and then people were using data on their phone on the move, in which case that was not very ideal. So I think you just need to keep that in mind as well. But the narrative was this rocket ship, but this was already in place way before, you know, the work from home arrangement started. So just to give full disclosure that in this case, their main use case or the problem was, how do we convert all of the contents we have to make it completely work from home? So in this case, they had, like, you know, the confirmation challenge that you saw, where they were getting people to kind of just do a checklist to make sure that they've secured their gadgets, they've enrolled in their medical plan, they've like taken a photo and uploaded it to their company app, and also completed like all their e-forms as well. And then they also had surveys every single 1 to 3 months to make sure, you know, like, are we making sure that your onboarding experience is as, you know, as good as possible, and if not, why? So in this case, yeah, a lot of survey and feedback as well. A lot of photo challenges as well, just to get to know each other better. Random things like, you know, take a photo of yourself with a colleague for lunch. So of course, like, you know, in person it's not possible anymore. So if you're having lunch like with a colleague on Zoom, take a photo of them on Zoom. Take a photo of what you ate today, whether it's at 7-Eleven or at McDonald's. You can see this person had like a McSpicy. Also kind of like, you know, random things about themselves. How much coffee do you drink per day? Are you fresh or experienced? So it's really just like very easy challenges to get to know each other better, because this is also not mandatory, but of course, especially now if they're not playing this, then they really do miss out on, like, you know, getting to know each other better. So as well as, like, you know, letting people know one thing about yourself in one sentence. So you can see this person has a very special ability. They can navigate Excel without a mouse, which is very impressive. Okay, and then, yeah, so another thing that I think that they've done as well is that they've been hosting a lot of sessions outside the app. So I think that this is one thing that I've noticed is quite key to the success of the game itself. You always need to ensure there's, you know, maybe events or sessions as well accompanying the actual game itself. So in this case, they had something called a new hire kopikakis. And then what happened was that I think the management team would host like a welcome session every single month for the new hires joining in their first month, just to kind of let them know, like, welcome to the company. What questions do you have? Share with us, you know, your thoughts and concerns. And then afterwards, share your thoughts in the session, upload your group Wi-Fi as well to gain points. So you can see this one particular was saying that it's my first session. Nice to know that there are others who have joined recently and are working from home, so that, you know, it's nice to know that I'm not alone in this onboarding, even though like most of the day I am actually by myself. Yeah, so then they also have insights sharing. So it's not just like fun stuff, getting to know each other better, but also kind of like, you know, recommendations on how to kind of progress throughout your 6-month journey. So for example, by month 3, you should already be doing a one-to-one connect with your line manager, taking Wi-Fi, and then they give you tips during the way. So it's kind of like, you know, very bite-sized tips that you can kind of share while you're kind of doing the challenges on the app as well. So especially as well, you know, if you have nerves when presenting, they give you recommendations on which courses to attend that are available within the organization's learning platform.
Probably just to give you a bit of a quick break, right? I want to take on a couple of questions from the chat room, right? From Hui Ling. In the case studies, were there considerations on use of real names, nicknames, and management's perception of staff who takes part in challenges often? And I think this is an interesting question because it runs into a catch-22 situation, right? If you don't participate, you're seen as passive, but you participate too much, you're seen as not really taking your work seriously and spending too much time on the game. I don't have a real answer to how we can balance this, right? I also don't have a real answer to how the management should be perceiving anyone that using their real name or their nicknames. From where we stand, right? Whatever project that you create, to me, that is considered a community. So in a community, right, in order to create trust, right, of course, a real name is definitely much more appreciated, right? It's the same with Facebook, right? You would be more trusting of a person who's a real profile than someone who's just has a picture of like Jackie Chan, right? So just one thing to take note of, right? Second thing to take note of is, of course, where it comes to certain content that is more sensitive, right? So for example, right, like in Gametize, we have a join us.gametize.com challenge. You can go and check it out. If you're keen to join Gametize as one of us, I don't think it's a good idea to use a real name because the name still shows up on the activity feed, right? So you might not want your colleagues, your current colleagues, to know that you are using those names. So in that kind of situation, then of course, I think it's fine to use a fake name. But otherwise, in a typical community, right, the authenticity of the user is quite important.
Yeah, so I think that I can add on to that as well. There are, I mean, for most non-mandatory games where the purpose is kind of just to connect for fun. So for example, the work from home game that I shared earlier, actually a lot of people were not using their real names. I saw that they weren't using their company emails as well. So for the case of that game administrator, they were quite okay with it because they were saying like, okay, as long as people are coming on at all and like playing, then for them that was good enough for them. But when it came to giving out rewards or, you know, kind of connecting with them to kind of, you know, paste their photo on the wall, then that became a difficulty because of the logistics, like who is this person actually? Yeah, so that's another consideration that you would have to think about for the games. If the rewards and like all the recognition is a very major part of the game, then of course you want people to be using their actual like credentials. Okay, so I'll just continue as well. So yeah, we're almost done actually. There's the insights sharing as well. So share an interesting article here, earn points. So that's kind of like, you know, getting them to actually go. I feel this is quite a clever way to get people to actually go in and read the actual articles to share something. And then rewards as well. So all the rewards were just like random beauty products, hygiene products, and all that, which, if you notice, actually didn't really get redeemed. The most popular one is this Kopi Kaki welcome pack. So I think that, you know, you get that when you finish your session in the first month. So I think people really redeemed that with 50. So it's quite popular. Okay. So just to share how it went, there were 348 players, 204 active. So I think, as usual, this is not mandatory, but I will say that noticeably the number of completions dropped towards month 2. I can't really say why at the moment. So it might also simply be the fact that some of these onboarding, they're still taking in new hires every week, and some of them just haven't simply passed that point yet. But then you can see that the completion rate is 16.13, so that's above the benchmark, as you remember, which was 10%, and the last 30 days, which in itself is 2,400. And actually, you know, despite the numbers for the drop-off, they've actually requested us to kind of like copy this template over, and then what they've done was that change the content slightly for new hires in other regions. So I think that they've kind of stumbled upon this as like their go-to template for onboarding, especially now that, you know, they're not able to do it as before. Yeah, so I think that was the last case study I wanted to share.
Okay.
Yeah.
So while we wait for more questions, I realized that none of our case studies here really have very strong creative narratives yet, right? They are quite plain vanilla. So I wanted to take a chance to share just one case study that I've already loaded up on my screen. So let me know if you can see this e-commerce Ninja Quest, right? Okay, great. So this was for a particular e-commerce company, and what they did over here is an induction campaign where you get to learn about the company's values and vision and mission, right? And you can see that the storyline that they have over here is that this is a ninja quest. You'll be traveling around the world, so you can come to Singapore and you can come to the different cities, and you would do challenges like QR codes and quizzes. And when you do them, right, you're able to unlock jewels. You can see. Well, I'm not sure where this client got all these like images from, right? Probably from Google Images, but we are not going to ask so much. But they all have a level of immersiveness, right? And all of these are just done. You can see that on the reward store, they actually give out things like ninja armor, lucky charm, and the potion. So if I'm not wrong, right, the ninja armor is actually a jacket or T-shirt, right, with the company logo. Even I think it might actually be the jersey that of the company, of the football club they are sponsoring as well, right? So that's a very valuable one actually, right? Lucky charm is actually lanyards, right? And magic potions are actually just drinks. So you see, even for very simple rewards, they were able to make it really super fun and cute. And so this was one of the campaigns that our clients designed entirely on their own. Sometimes we feel like we are not the masters of gamification designers, to be honest, right? Our clients actually does a much better job than us. The only reason why we are still in business today is because we are really good at stealing ideas from them, right? And putting them into our templates as well, right? And do case studies with them. But there are millions of ideas out there, right? Really, it's down to your creativity skills to come up with something that is a level like that as well. So you can again go to academy.gametize.com and you can find like you can navigate around resources and go to case studies, and you will be able to see like there are many other like case studies that you can take inspirations from as well.
All right, if you have any last questions, feel free to write in chat, or if not, feel free to write into academy@gametize.com. We'll be happy to answer it there. So what we'll do is that if you write in, we'll give you the slide deck, and then we'll also be recording this webinar. So I think that we'll be able to put the recording maybe about a week from now. And then, so just check out, yeah, you can see Kumar's put all the links there for, you know, what's needed.
Okay, great. So I think we come to the end. Before we wrap it up, right? You know, feel free to reach out to us if you need some exclusive demo for you and your team. And with that, I would like to have just one humble request. I would like to request all of you to just turn on the camera, right? We just do a group selfie, right? A video selfie along the way. And I'm just going to unmute everybody as well. So just feel free, just voice out on your side. Okay. So I think slowly we have some more people opening the cameras. You know, if you're feeling shy, that's fine, right? If you like to put out your cat up, that's fine as well.
Yeah, your favorite stuffed toy, anything. Okay, I think I see some familiar faces, if I'm not wrong.
I might have come on once before.
Yes, Caroline, I think I feel like, yeah, we've met before. You've come to the...
Yeah, I was with Marcus.
Yeah, I remember from there.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Right. I hope you had a good learning session. I think we have people from different time zones here. In fact, the most intense one is actually somebody that's on EST, right? He's calling in all the way from US. So he's currently like 4 a.m. right now over there. So thank you, whoever you are and wherever you are at, right? We really appreciate your presence with us.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, bye.